Welcome to Authors Revealed. I'm Becky Anderson. We are so excited. James Ponti is here with his new middle grade book for kids. It's a great mystery. It's called Framed. It's a toast mystery. Welcome to Anderson's in Naperville. It's so great to have you here.
It is an absolute treat to be here and get to see this world-famous bookstore.
Oh, you're sweet. Hey, I hear you're good friends with Andrea Bates, Naperville's own children's author right here.
Andrea is great. The very first author event I went to was a librarian convention in Florida, and Andrea happened to be the first person I met.
Yeah.
And she just has, from that day on, continued to be kind of a spirit guide through this business.
Yeah,
and it's great.
She's great for that. She's
She's
so great talking
amazing.
to other authors and just helping them out with everything. She's so great.
It's a great thing. You know, I was talking to Lori Holtz-Anderson a couple months ago,
Yeah.
and I was talking to Lori about that very thing. She said, you know, there was an author who pulled me aside once, and he said, Lori, we're not competitors, we're co-conspirators. And that is how I feel like, especially in the middle grade and young adult world, the authors are to each other, and it's a treat.
It
It's
is.
a real, it's
I think it's you know, talking when I see a group of children's authors, yeah, they're so collegial to one another. They're very supportive. I think the adult world's a little different.
I think it is, and it's certainly the writing world that I've been in with television is different like that. But
Yeah,
I think,
sure.
I think our view is that if we can get a kid to read, we've won.
Yeah,
and
that's
if
right.
and if they'll read your book, maybe they'll read mine. But if not, that's the battle. The competition is not each other. It's
Right.
that plateau, getting them through that initial. Okay,
Right.
I'm into reading.
Yeah, and I think talking about middle grade, there's so much great middle grade fiction coming out for kids. It's such a sweet spot.
It's a wonderful time. It
And-
is
and
a great
keeping-
time in that.
Yeah, and keeping kids reading through this age, you've got them for life.
That's and it is great, and it is something that I didn't feel growing up. Maybe it was there and I didn't know. I really struggled as a reader growing up, and so when I write, I'm always kind of right for that kid, like me,
Which is great.
that
yeah.
you know maybe wasn't into
Sure.
it, but if the right story comes along,
So this is your fourth novel.
yes,
I mean, you have some other things we'll talk about
Right.
too, but for middle grade, and so Framed, a Toast mystery, has been out in the world about
a couple weeks, 3
couple
weeks, I
weeks
think
now.
now, yeah.
So what are you hearing from readers, especially of the Dark Days? You know, that series. What are they?
Well,
what
you know, I haven't heard a lot of a continuation because
Okay.
the series are different.
They are very
the thing
different.
that I'm hearing the most, that's exciting me the most, is the mystery series. The character uses this thing called T.O.A.S.T, which is the
Right.
theory of all small things.
Yeah.
And the idea is that you ignore the big things because people lie with big things, but they overlook little details. And you add up the little things. And what's really been great is a couple of people have actually written to me to say they found their kids playing T.O.A.S.T after they've read the book. Like
Oh,
they're
that's
out,
so
you know,
great. That's
Stu
so
Gibbs,
great.
the author, he said his kids
Oh,
are
yeah.
obsessed with playing T.O.A.S.T everywhere they go, and have like asked him to call and ask if they can get book 2, which is done but is in the very early stages of being done, and they want to read it now because they want more T.O.A.S.T.
They want
so
more
that's
Toast.
great.
Well,
yeah.
that's so cool because you know the detail. It's all in the details, right?
Yes, and
Yeah,
that's been the fun
so-
of the series for
yeah,
sure.
for
Yes.
sure. So tell us, where did the seed start to grow for this book, and knowing that it is going to be a series?
It is, you know, I love mysteries. I used to write a mystery TV show years ago for Nickelodeon, and I had great fun doing that. And so I wanted to come up with mystery, and then T.O.A.S.T is actually a thing that I play in the airport. I travel a lot in my other job as a television producer, and I spend tons of time in the airports or waiting around. And the fun thing to do to pass the time is to study the people and try to figure out what can I figure out from them just by looking at them, and then eavesdrop and find out if I'm right.
Right.
Like, you know, which families are together, or which destination is he going to? Because right now there's
Right,
3 different
right.
boarding areas nearby. And it was just something I did to pass the time. And when I mixed the two, that's when it kind of came together. And that was the seed of like, this is fun. I'm going to give this guy Florian, and I'm going to give him a friend, and they're going to go off and running.
Yeah. And so talking about Florian Bates, you know, what a great character. He's so smart, he's so intelligent, but he's fun. He's just a great character. But now he's moved to a new place. He's in, you know, and he didn't have a whole lot of friends, right, where he lived before. But now he has a really cool next door neighbor that he's met.
It's the whole series to me is about that relationship.
Yeah, right.
And you know, watching kids grow up, my kids grow up, watching them through that awkward thing when they're in middle school, and they think no one knows their strengths. What I love about their dynamic is Florian has this ability, and he's never realized what it was. And she instantly sees that you can solve mysteries. You can do this. I want to learn this. I want to do this. And it only works because it's the two of them together.
Right. So where did Florian, where did his DNA come from? Where did you pull the pieces together for him?
I'm a hodgepodge. So my mom was this hippie painter that went to Europe to paint and came back with a kid. And there's another painter.
So that's the Italy part for you.
So I was born in Italy, right?
Yeah,
you know,
right.
I was referred to by another painter in our town as the Italian love child. You know, and that became, I liked that background because I was always a little bit different. You know, it's like when you grow up in Atlantic Beach, Florida, and everyone there grew up in Atlantic Beach, Florida, and was born in the same hospital. And it's like, wait, you were born in Italy?
Yeah.
What's that weird? You know, and so I wanted to give them a little bit of that. I think we live in an era where it's really nice to have a kid with a worldview. And that's one of the things that as I go into subsequent books, I'm really trying to explore. He doesn't see the world as a 12-year-old American. He sees the world as a 12-year-old European who speaks English and is American. And that's kind of the fun with Margaret. So I think he came from my wanting that. And he's also really, you know, very similar to my son.
Right.
You know, it's like, you know, so it's like all these things trying to pull together.
And Florian had been in school in Italy before he moves to DC. So,
right. And so this technique that he uses was really a technique of survival when you move all the time.
Right. So Florian's family, they've moved to DC. So tell us about Margaret, who lives next door.
So
and she's such a cool character.
She's great. I love Margaret.
Yeah,
I mean, I love writing her.
Yeah.
I feel really strongly about girl characters. Okay. So my first series had a girl protagonist. A lot of mothers came up to me and said, "This would be great if there was a boy character like this." You know, and I had sons, so I relate to that.
Sure.
The thing for me is, all right, I want not the obvious things. So if one of them is a great athlete, it's Margaret, it's not Florian. If one of them is confident and science-minded in this, it's Margaret, not Florian. But I don't want to just switch their roles. I wanted them to just be, you know, a nice mix that they fulfill each other.
Yeah.
And I think in a way, too, his European background, maybe, I think she feels like I have a chance to be totally myself because he has no preconceived notion with how 12-year-old girls are supposed to be.
Yeah, sure. And I like the fact that, you know, she's an athlete, she's smart, and they're really such good friends.
Well, that's the goal. And I think really the series is the story of their friendship. Yeah. That's the mystery they're finding.
So, you know, I want to know, you know, there's a lot of FBI stuff in this, which was really cool. And I don't want to give any spoilers because this is a mystery here. And also the National Gallery in Washington, D.C. features a role in here. So what kind of research did you do? Because the FBI, you could do a lot of background stuff that's really cool for kids to read about. I'm
a firm believer in research. I used to work at the History Channel. I used to produce a show for the History Channel. My wife's a history teacher. Research is essential to me. So the idea of the series is the mystery in each book is set at an iconic cultural institution in Washington. So book 2 takes place, it's a musician disappears during a performance at the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts.
Okay. So no more.
No. But I tell you, so what I did is I called the Kennedy Center and I arranged for a behind-the-scenes tour.
Oh, cool.
And so they took me all around and I got to look at the places where the mystery would take place. So I wasn't just imagining; I wanted it to be real.
Sure.
And I looked and I saw different things there. And for the National Gallery of Art, I couldn't convince them to show me behind the scenes. I think just the thought that there's maybe an art theft makes them freak out a little bit.
Okay.
So I went there probably for extended times 3 times, taking tons of pictures. Sure. I went back like 5 months later and the guard recognized me because I'd been there so much. And so I started a conversation and he told me some stuff, behind the scenes stuff, which was great.
That's great.
and really researched, all the FBI headquarters, Quantico, trying to make things as realistic as possible.
Yeah, and I don't want to give too many spoilers, but Florian does. They become covert, consultants for the FBI.
Yes, yes.
And he's sent to Quantico for training.
Yes, and that I also was not able to get behind the scenes
I
there,
bet.
but you can find
Right.
stuff about that, and I like the portrayal of the FBI in it. Is the FBI agent who's a character is a fun guy for me to write.
So Florian teaches Margaret, shows him the people watching to teach it because she wants to learn how to toast,
Right.
how to do toast.
How to do toast, right?
Yeah, right. So I mean, like you mentioned, what you do at airports and everything. So what do you do when you go into schools or you talk to other kids? How do you demonstrate to them what toast is all about?
Well, a funny thing happened. So part of the research is I go back to the National Gallery of Art. So after I've written the first draft, I went back and I wanted to specifically look at the places I knew I was using. And I took the tour, because we just love museums, my whole family. So we took the art tour, the history of French art. And we walk up and there's this painting of Napoleon in his study at the Tuileries, I think by David. And the woman says, she shows us this painting. She says, "What time is it?" And I look at the clock, and there's a clock in the background, and I go, "It's 4:13." And then she goes, "Is it AM or PM?" And this is the actual tour, right?
Yeah,
and I'm
right.
like, "Oh, I don't know." And she goes, and it turns out there's a candle that's lit. It's the middle of the night.
Right.
So I gave that speech to Florian to teach Margaret, because it's perfectly in the location. So that's the value of research,
Right,
because it's like,
sure.
that's what toast is.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking for, I joke with my agent all the time. I go, I'm going nuts because everywhere I go, I'm looking for clues so I can write them down to save them for future mysteries kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. And I know that comparisons are made. Like he's like a Sherlock Holmes in some ways, because it is all in those small things that people don't notice. But it's also being compared to some of like the Anthony Horowitz books. Talking about Alex Rider.
Right.
Because it's a little bit of that teenage James Bond, but it's that intuitive mind to know to look for everything.
Well, and actually, it was funny. I was talking to Kevin just right before we came
Yeah.
over here. We sat down. We were talking for a little bit about each other's books.
Yeah.
And he pointed out something in the conversation. The difference with Sherlock Holmes to me is Florian is very smart, but his mystery solving is all based on observations that any kid can make. It's no secret knowledge that, well, of course I know that because in the year 1927 there was only 3 of those made, and there's none of that.
Right.
It has to be stuff that you can see, and I think that's from my background as a script writer.
Okay.
Because in script writing, you can only get away with what you can see.
Okay. So, give us an example, your favorite example of how Florian and Margaret use toast to solve, because, this is not giving anything away, but 3 paintings have been stolen from the National Gallery, right?
Right.
Yeah. So tell us one of your favorite examples of how toast is used.
And my favorite example, I think, is the one that actually happens in the FBI headquarters. He's in the FBI headquarters for, again, we don't want to spoil things, but he's there, and while he's waiting to see someone, he sees photos from 3 different crime scenes. And he's not at all involved in he doesn't know what the crime is.
Right.
And then he asks, in 2 of them the crime scenes are in the kitchen, and the third one the picture is of the living room. And he asks someone, he goes, "Can I see a picture from the kitchen in this crime scene?" And the FBI agent is like, "What are you talking about?" And then that's when Margaret says, "Watch out, here it comes." And it's like that he's able to look at these pictures and see that there's a mistake. And I mean, I don't want to spoil.
No, don't
spoil what
spoil
the
it.
mistake
No,
is.
but I know what you.
But that's when
Yeah.
then suddenly the FBI guy is like, "Wait, maybe this is more than a fluke. Maybe this kid really can do this."
I'm sure kids are, they're going to take away from this novel that they need to look at those little things, to pay attention. It makes you more. It makes you more aware of your
Definitely the
surroundings.
goal. I would love it if they do that.
Yeah.
If they think critically, if they look for patterns.
Right.
I love looking for patterns and things.
Yeah. There's such a good friendship in this book, and talking to Kevin about his, that the friendship is so important part of these stories. But also, too, I like the way you portrayed parents in this. Because when some middle grade, and I'm talking just some, but some books, or even in the past, where the kids are smart, but the parents are just kind of goofy or silly or not particularly intelligent, which is not the case. These are real parents in this book.
And actually, that's the most common reaction I get from both the Dead City books and from this, is the portrayal of families. And it's incredibly important to me.
Yeah.
And the idea, and maybe that's because when I started writing these, I had kids in middle school, and I wanted them to think of, your parents are not dumb.
Right.
Your parents are, in fact, your biggest fans, and they're rooting for you too. So I wanted parents who were realistic, who were upset about things that parents should be upset about, but I also didn't want them to dominate the thing. I didn't want helicopter parents. I wanted Florian's a kid who is on his own enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, your dialogue is really great too. So I was wondering if some of that television experience and everything, writing those things, have helped with the dialogue that you create.
Well, I think that is an essential part of all of it. I mean,
Okay.
that's the key. So I wrote for Nickelodeon for a long time. I wrote for Disney Channel for a long time, and I wrote a lot of dialogue. And it is the reason that I write probably more often than not first person, because my degree is in screenwriting. My background is in screenwriting,
right.
and so to me, 300 pages of dialogue is really what a book is almost.
Yeah.
And one of my best friends is Suzanne Collins. Suzanne and I wrote on shows together for about 10 years.
That's right. She did do
Yes.
television
So,
work. That's
so
right.
Suzanne and I wrote
Yeah.
forever together, and I talk about that with her. I'm like,
Right.
I think, is that why we write first person? Because Katniss tells it in first person.
Yeah, sure.
I think Gregor is not. I think Gregor is third person.
Gregor's not first
Yeah,
person. You're
but
right.
you know, it's
Yeah.
I think it's a natural thing, and I think if you look at a lot of the people who come into, there's a lot of crossover right now. I think between film and television and middle grade, and I think some people probably don't love that, but I think actually it's the people that are doing it were quality.
Right.
It's nice storytelling.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah,
but the
for
dialogue
sure.
I really work hard on, and it helps to have a wife who's a school teacher.
Yeah.
And so I see a lot of kids, even though.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're channeling.
Yeah.
You're channeling those kids, and also
Absolutely.
right. So outlining. What is your process when you're doing this?
Okay.
Do you outline, or do you write and it's surprising you as much as it?
I have a strange process that I don't know anyone else that does.
Okay.
So I always write from page one. So I write from page one to the point where, like, if I pick it up and I'm on page 50, that when I sit down, I start rereading from page one, and I change things as I go until I get to 50.
Oh.
And then I start writing. When I get to maybe 250, maybe I only go back to like 175. But, you know, and sometimes I can go a couple days without doing that, but I need to write in a linear way.
Right. Okay.
And when I did Dead City, because it's the first book series that I had done, I thought it was really important not to I hate in mysteries when you can guess the ending. So I thought if I don't know the ending, I can't over telegraph it.
Yeah. Right.
So
Yeah,
I would
that
put in
makes total
clues,
sense.
and I would try to solve them with the characters.
Yeah.
These mysteries are a little bit different because they're full-on mysteries. I have to know how the resolution works so I can make sure to make it. But I don't outline much. I think I just do like 2 lines per chapter that I don't keep to when I'm about halfway through. I'm no longer on track.
Right. And talking about the Dead City, you know, I love the character that, you know, the zombie hunter kids
Yeah.
taking place. It was all in New York City. So tell us a little bit about that series, and will there be any more in that series?
So the thing is, Dead City was great fun to write, and I loved it. But no one knew who I was, and no one, right? So after we have the first 2, we have this kind of waiting period, and it's like, well, do we know if there's going to be another one? And during the waiting period, I came up with Florian, right? So I'm writing that, and I send that off to my agent, and a YA novel that's actually going to come out in a year. I send the idea to my agent, and then the Texas Bluebonnet list and the Florida Sunshine State list both picked Dead City, and all of a sudden there's more attention, and it's like Simon & Schuster was like, well, we love the new stuff, and we're really thrilled with this, but you have to wrap this up so we can get onto the new stuff.
Okay.
So Dead City is done.
It's done. Okay.
And now I'm on into Florian World.
But in that series, I think you named 2 of the boy characters after your son.
Yes. So
Yeah.
So I modeled one of the characters after my son Grayson, and I had him read it, and I said, "This is based on you, on some things that you wish that you saw in books that you don't always see. Do you want me to name the character after you?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "Well, then that means the other boy's got to be named after Alex, my other son, because I can't do one and not the other."
And I noticed framed you've dedicated to Alex.
Yes.
Which is absolutely wonderful.
Yes. Yeah. So, and my son Alex passed away actually while I was writing the book, and he was severely autistic and epileptic, and I think that really shaded a lot. Actually, that's the reason I wrote. I don't want to veer off the
Yeah,
topic
right,
too much,
sure.
but it was a way to, if I had to, I could work at home and take care of him.
Oh, of course.
And so he's just a part of the books, and it's nice to have.
Now you have written a bunch of other books. They're junior novelizations of stuff, and I know that's probably but I find that interesting. But no, you've done so many different experiences that have informed what you're doing now. So how about writing those types of novelizations? Whether from movies for kids or whatever, but also working with television on multiple different series. They had all those experiences have to inform what you're doing now.
They do.
Yeah.
I get nervous because I don't really count that as writing always. So I was writing for the Mystery Files of Shelby Woo, and the writing staff was actually Suzanne Collins and me were the two writers for the writing staff. And they said, we're going to have a book series to go along with this series. And Suzanne and I both said, well, we want to write a book. And they literally told us, they go, well, that's like real writers write books, and you guys are just TV writers, right?
Come on.
So we begged and pleaded, and they said, well, you can write like 5 chapters and send it to us, and we'll see if we like it. And they liked it, and so they ended up having me do 3. So the joke I always do to Suzanne is like, they only had you do 1, they had me do 3. So I don't know what that says about our writing talent.
Right.
But so I wrote those 3, and then people knew me because of that in that line of work, and because of a TV background, I could write them pretty quickly. Yeah. And so every now and then I'd get a call from Disney saying, hey, can you do a movie novelization for us? And I'm real familiar with scripts, and they knew that, and my kids had tuition, and so I would say yes.
All right, good.
And so I wrote a bunch of all kinds of things, yes.
Yeah, right.
But they all helped. They all helped me.
No, sure.
Yeah.
That's what,
Yeah.
So USC Film School.
Yes.
So tell us about what that experience was, and then how did you get into producing and writing for television?
So I did. I majored in screenwriting, graduated during a writer's strike, which is not the best way to break in as a screenwriter. Right. Eventually left Los Angeles, moved back to Florida because I could live with my mom for free, and managed to have a script optioned in LA when I was in Florida.
Right.
And that led to an agent, and that led to getting hired to write the Mickey Mouse Club. So I wrote the Mickey Mouse Club, which was based in Florida, and then that jumped to Nickelodeon. So all of a sudden, I'm a kids' TV writer. Yeah. And then we're just and that world is also pretty insular. So I jumped into animation, and it just kind of flowed. But the writing is all external writing and all action writing. Right. And a certain kind of pace. And I think I probably write books with a similar pace.
Yeah, right. And you've also written for the History Channel and some other things too, right? So, besides children's television.
Right. Well, the children's television, at a certain age, they don't call you as much. And there was actually a roller derby show in town, asked me would I come be their producer, and I needed a job, and I produced that. And they said, well, can you do documentaries? I was like, sure. And so I started producing documentaries, and so that happened next.
Okay. And you after your mom came back from Italy with you, and you moved to Florida.
Yes.
And I read, this was so great, you were a guide or a counselor for the Davy Crockett Explorer camp.
I was Davy Crockett, yes.
Yeah, so tell us how that, because that had been a really
fun
experience.
Everyone knows the Jungle Cruise. The Jungle Cruise is a really fun ride, and they got the power boat, and they got the safari ride. Right. That's what I thought I was being hired to do. But it turned out, they used to have it, they've closed the ride since then, this Davy Crockett Explorer canoe ride. So you paddle canoes around Frontierland and Liberty Square, and you tell jokes. And I had to tell the same jokes over 1,000 times. And so you learn how to rewrite the jokes, and that's where I learned rewriting. Was playing Davy Crockett. And actually, one of the other Davy Crockett's is now the president of the Judson University, and he's going to be here. We haven't seen each other in 25 years.
Great.
But he heard I was coming up because that was like my college fraternity was the Crockett's. So we keep in touch every now and then from a distance.
So fun. Oh, that's great. That's so great. So your school events, and I know you and Kevin Sands were doing schools together. What do you do with T.O.A.S.T. with the kids? So you must
I show them the painting.
Them how to do it.
I show them the painting that Florian uses to teach, so they can see literally how. Okay. I read to them from, there's a scene when Florian first demonstrates T.O.A.S.T. to Margaret. Okay. And so I read that scene so they can see what we mean. And, my wife's a teacher, and she's really adamant that do things for schools. So like one of the things I did, which isn't a school event thing so much, but is I wrote a mystery that takes place in a school library. And I wrote all the scripts, and I created all the clues, and I just give that free to librarians anywhere they're interested in the book.
Yeah.
And it teaches, the idea of it is a spy has been posing as a substitute teacher passing secrets in library books. And so you just take 3 kids from school, and they're the suspects, and by the end of it, the kids know what T.O.A.S.T is, and they know how to use it.
Oh, that's so cool.
So that's on the website, and
Yeah.
people can just download it on
Oh,
the website.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so your wife, Denise, you mentioned
Yes.
that she's a teacher, but she's usually your first reader and your
she's-
first editor.
Yes, she was a journalism major in school.
Okay.
And so she's got good editing skills, and she's an avid reader. And so she reads everything.
Yeah.
And she's a good judge because she's a teacher. She knows that audience.
Yeah.
And she's famous for, she look at, oh, that's good. And I say, okay, so it's not.
Yeah.
What's wrong with it? She goes,
Yeah.
I don't know, if I knew, I'd be the writer.
Yeah, right.
Fix it. And then I fix it, you know.
Yeah. So does your editor at Simon and Schuster appreciate what your wife is saying?
Well, they often agree with stuff.
that's so good.
She'll write, I'm sending you this, but Denise said I should do this, and she always writes back, Denise is a much smarter person than you. It's like, okay, I should listen to Denise and not my nervous, neurotic self.
Right. So what's next in the T.O.A.S.T mystery? So can you tell us what's coming next, or without spoilers?
So yeah, in book 2,
Yeah.
in the second book, which is called Vanished, at least it's called Vanished now, it comes out next year, and in Vanished, actually Florian and Margaret have to go undercover at the school where the president's daughter is a student.
Oh,
Because something's been happening, and they don't know if she's the intended victim or if maybe she's the perpetrator. And so that leads onto a thing. But a funny thing, actually, out of order, but you mentioned earlier the research. Florian goes to a real school. And that real school I visit every year, and they're involved in this process. It's Alice Steele Middle School. It's in Northwest Washington. And I'm going there next week. So this will be the big debut. It's right around the corner from Politics and Prose. So they have their own independent bookstore.
Oh, that's a great story.
And so I do stuff with them, and their kids are all into the books. It's fun.
Well, the owners are friends of mine.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's what a great store, too.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Okay, I end these interviews with a little quiz, so
Okay.
you know all the answers. They're mostly book-related or,
Okay,
some
sure.
of the things you've done. Okay, do you remember a favorite book from your childhood? Anything?
I was not a great reader, so it's easy to remember because there's not as many to choose from.
Yeah, right.
From the Mixed Up Files, Miss Baisley, Frank Weiler is the book that rocked my world. And when I wrote Dead City, which is also set in New York with a 12-year-old girl, I wanted to send a copy of it to Elaine Koenigsberg.
Right.
And so I tried to ask around where if it turned out she lived in my hometown of Atlanta Beach, Florida my whole life, and I never knew it.
Oh,
She's this famous
really?
author. I assumed she was in New York, and so I probably saw her at our grocery store, which is Publix.
Sure.
But she lived there for 30, 40 years. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, and that explains why you like to write mysteries.
Yeah, exactly. That was my first
right.
book that hooked me. That and Encyclopedia Brown was also one I always loved reading, so the mysteries were always part of it.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. So do you remember a film that you loved studying in film school or at USC?
Well, the film that was really important to me was All the President's Men.
Okay.
And when I was 10 years old, my family took me, we all went to see it. And I had heard for years, like 3 years at that point, about Watergate. And as a 7-year-old, 8-year-old, it made no sense to me. And I watched this movie, and it changed my world. And I made everyone in the family sit through it again. So we sat there for 4 hours watching it. And I thought, I want to be in this business. I want to do a thing where you write things that make people understand things.
Right. Yeah.
So that was the movie for me.
Okay. Do you remember? Okay, what would you consider one of your favorite television shows, or what do you think is one of the best?
I think West Wing is the best written show.
Okay.
I think Sesame Street is the most important show for a kid, someone who's worked in children's television.
Sure.
It is the hallmark that we all aspire to.
Okay, and if you could live in a fictional world from any book, or just visit it, which one would that be?
Visit is gotta be Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Get past the squeamishness with the Oompa Loompas and just go for the chocolate. I think would be pretty great.
Oh, they're so cute, the
They
Oompa
are, well,
Loompas. Yeah. And the last question, have you read anything recently or reading something now that you really are enjoying?
Well, I'm very upset because I bought Razor Girl yesterday, and you have autographed copies here, and I love Carl Hyacin. Carl Hyacin is my god. So I just started reading Razor Girl. So I always read all of his. I always read all of Michael Connelly. Certain mystery guys, I just keep going back to.
Yeah. Okay, 100% A+.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
Okay, James, thank you so much. And congratulations on Framed, and we can't wait for the next T.O.A.S.T.
Oh, well, I am so excited to be here. And, I am so thrilled that it's finding a home in independent bookstores.
Great conversation with television producer and writer James Ponti about his new book for middle grade readers. It's called Framed, a T.O.A.S.T. mystery. Thanks for joining me on Authors Revealed.